It's pretty wild to think that the secret to fighting some of our most devastating diseases, we're talking Alzheimer's, cancer, might be hiding in plain sight. In fact, it's probably in your kitchen right now. Today, we're going to get into the absolutely incredible story of how simple baker's yeast became this powerhouse for modern medical research.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like the setup to a really nerdy joke, right? But the answer to this question is actually one of the most important tools in modern biology. It's a tiny, single-celled fungus that we've been using for thousands of years. Baker's yeast. And trust me, its role in science goes way, way beyond just making a good loaf of bread.
So to really get why yeast is such a game changer, we first have to appreciate the massive wall that researchers run into. Trying to study human diseases directly in, well, humans is just unbelievably difficult. It really is a problem of overwhelming complexity.
And this slide really breaks down those hurdles. First off, you have strict ethical boundaries for very good reasons. Then you've got time. Human lives play out over decades, not days. And our genetics, with over 20,000 genes, trying to find the one that's causing a problem is like trying to find a single faulty wire in the power grid of an entire city. It's almost impossible. We desperately need a simpler model.
And this is where our story takes a weird turn, right? Because the solution wasn't some super high-tech machine. Scientists turned to Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Yep, common baker's yeast. This simple, fast-growing fungus that, it turns out, could help us unlock the secrets of our own incredibly complicated biology.
So, you're probably asking, why yeast? Look at us. We're complex. Yeast is, well, yeast. But here's the thing. At a fundamental level, both our cells and yeast cells are eukaryotic. Think of it like they're running the same basic operating system. They both have a nucleus, mitochondria, and, this is the crucial part, they share these deeply conserved, ancient pathways for doing the most important stuff, like cell division and managing energy. This right here is the absolute core of it. We're separated from this humble fungus by more than 1 billion years of evolution. 1 billion years. And yet, we still share thousands of genes that do pretty much the exact same jobs in our cells as they do in a yeast cell. This shared history is the bedrock for everything that follows.
And if you need a number to just blow your mind, here it is. In one landmark experiment, scientists took out an essential yeast gene, one the yeast needs to live, and they just plugged in the human version of that gene. And almost half the time, the yeast was totally fine. It just kept on living. That's right. Our genes can literally run a yeast cell. It's incredible.
So, because of this incredible, deep compatibility, scientists can do something that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. They can humanize yeast. They can actually engineer this simple fungus to act like a model for what goes wrong in our own cells when we get sick.
So what exactly is a humanized yeast? Well, think of it as a yeast cell that's been given a specific human gene to carry, often a gene that we know is linked to a disease. This basically turns the yeast into a tiny, living test tube. It lets us watch exactly what that one human protein is doing, or what goes wrong when it's broken, all inside a super simple, fast, and totally controlled system.
And the process itself, when you break it down, is actually pretty elegant. Step 1. You find the human gene you're interested in. Step 2. You use these amazing genetic tools to pop it right into the yeast's DNA. And then, step 3 is the fun part. You just watch. Does the yeast cell get sick? Does it stop growing? The way that little yeast cell reacts gives us powerful, powerful clues about what that gene is doing in our own bodies.
All right, so we've built these little biological machines. We have humanized yeast. What can we actually do with them? Well, it turns out they are giving us critical breakthroughs in some of the toughest, most challenging areas of medicine.
Let's start with the brain. Diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are just devastating. A big reason they're so hard to fight is that they're often caused by proteins that go rogue. They misfold and start clumping together, becoming toxic to our brain cells. And studying that process inside a living human brain is, well, it's next to impossible. But in yeast, it's a whole different story. Scientists can put the human genes for these toxic proteins, like amyloid beta for Alzheimer's or alpha-synuclein for Parkinson's, right into the yeast. The yeast then starts making these human proteins, which, just like in our brains, misfold, clump up, and make the yeast cells sick. It gives us a front-row seat to the molecular disaster.
It's not just about the brain, though. Yeast is also completely changing the game when it comes to cancer. And one of the coolest ideas in cancer therapy today is something called synthetic lethality. Now, it sounds complicated, but yeast makes it really, really easy to understand.
Okay, check this out.
In a healthy cell, imagine you have two genes, gene A and gene B, that can do the same vital job. Gene A is the main highway, and gene B is the backup country road. If the highway is closed, no big deal. You just take the backup road. The cell is fine. Now, a lot of cancer cells have a mutation that has already shut down gene A, the highway, but they're survived because they're relying on that backup road, gene B.
So here's the billion-dollar question. What if we could find a drug that only blocks that backup road, gene B? What happens then, but only in the cancer cell that's already missing gene A?
And boom, that's the magic right there. In the cancer cell, taking out the backup road is catastrophic. The cell dies. But in your healthy cells, which still have that main highway gene A, blocking the backup road does nothing. They're perfectly fine. This is the holy grail of cancer therapy, a drug that kills cancer cells while leaving healthy cells completely alone. And yeast is the perfect tool for finding these deadly combinations.
And this brings us to the final huge application, using these yeast models to find new medicines faster than ever before. Because you can grow trillions of yeast cells very cheaply, you can screen thousands, even millions of potential drug compounds all at once. It's a massive shortcut.
Scientists have all kinds of clever tricks for this. There's a technique called chemogenomic profiling, where they test a drug against thousands of different yeast mutants to see which ones it affects. That quickly tells you what the drug is doing. Another one, called yeast-2-hybrid, is like a cellular dating app. It shows which proteins like to partner up, revealing brand new targets for drugs. The whole system is just built for speed.
So where does all this go from here? What's next for our humble fungal hero? Well, the research is getting even more ambitious, moving from just single genes to modeling entire human systems, and even personalized medicine.
Okay, let's be real for a second. Yeast isn't a tiny human. It has limits. It doesn't have tissues, it doesn't have an immune system, but the frontiers are just so exciting. Scientists are doing something called deep humanization, where they swap out entire pathways in yeast with the human versions. And maybe the most amazing idea is creating personalized yeast strains, making a yeast model that carries the specific genetic mutations from one individual patient to test which drugs will work best just for them.
And this isn't science fiction. This idea of creating a personalized yeast avatar for each patient to predict how their disease will go or to find the perfect treatment, it's fast becoming a reality. It's a total paradigm shift.
So it all comes back to this, doesn't it? This simple little organism, the one we use to make bread and beer, which has been with humanity for our entire history, is still teaching us the most profound secrets about our own biology. It's just an amazing reminder that sometimes the answers to our biggest, most complex questions can be found in the most unexpected places. Which just makes you wonder, what other breakthroughs are just waiting for us, hiding in the simplest forms of life all around us?